It's a special between the numbers Monday edition, which means the People's Pundit had a court case and was up all night. Trial today. Hold an election yesterday. Let's go. Let's go. Where did I put that bass, guys? Let's see. Got something to show you. Pretty sure I called it bass voter analysis. Pretty sure. Today. Huh, that's weird. Where did this thing go? There it is right there. No, it ain't. Uh-oh. What? Well, looks like I didn't hit save, and we'll have to do it all over again. You're kidding me. It's gonna make me sign in all over again. Fingerprint. All right, folks, welcome to a special episode of Between the Numbers with the People's Pundit, which means I was a little bit busy, and hopefully it goes well. You do the work you do. You only do it for people you think are it's gratifying because you think there's a certain injustice, and we see how the cookie crumbles. I'll tell you, folks, a lot of people have been taken off guard by how polarized and politicized our judicial system has been. But for some of us, this is something that we have been seeing for a long time. And it's become a real problem, a significant problem. All right, we do have to get only actives, though, in this model. So I can't believe I might have done this. I think I put it somewhere else. I might have put it in the cloud or something. But locals, the national was done. And I guess once it's done completely, it doesn't take that long to redo. But you may have seen something that I wrote and told everybody to stay tuned on locals because we're going to have some states that we're going to give you. But nationally, it matters because there are inference models in states, important states like Georgia, Michigan, Minnesota, Virginia. Okay. States like that. And there are more. But we don't have voter registration by party when we run these inference models. Every year they get better. Every year we know more information about you, and every year the technology gets better. So this idea that there won't be an apples to apples comparison, I saw a certain somebody who just flunked look, there are sampling errors. If I wanted to be a real D, then I could just go on and say, didn't you just mock Rasmussen for missing Michigan by like 1 point? All right, there are certain things called sampling errors and confidence intervals. I don't know. We'll have to take a look at it, but that does not look like the end result in the election in Poland. And once again, the Conservative Party candidate was understated. So while the left-wing vote share, this is something that Sean Trendy, I have looked at in recent polling misses. It's not a matter of they're always overstating Democrats support or overstating left-wing support. It's that actually they're pretty close. They have, on average, been pretty close to the vote shares for, and maybe overstate them a little bit. But what really happens is that they understate, in more cases than not, they understate the right-wing vote share. And that clearly happened in Poland. There were a slew of polls from the typical bad pollsters, and they were very wrong. All right. We'll get into that, though. First things first, which is a piggyback off of Friday, there's another estimate right off the bat. I was going to show you and we can, but I really would like to actually get their commentary on it, which is what I'm going to do. Let's do that. There it is right there. All right, let me stop sharing this one. I was just going to share an image with you, but I decided let's not. Let's do the readout. And you can always look at the chart when we read it out. We tried to explain, everyone is discussing the tariffs, and they should, rightfully, in some respect, they should be discussing the tariffs in the context of inflation. Inflation was a huge deal when it came to the election, of course. But there is another side to this. All right, there is. And that is the increase in manufacturing, which people said would not happen. Well, according to a new estimate, that's not true. Fortune magazine is estimating an enormous amount of jobs created within the next decade. But there's also another end of this, and that's the GDP equation, how gross domestic product is calculated in the United States of America. Our trade deficit is a net negative on GDP. If you increase exports and reduce imports, and you narrow the trade deficit, GDP, the growth of the domestic economy, is going to explode. We have been growing at weaker than usual rates in the globalist era. Let's just call it that, because Reagan wasn't in the globalist era. And that's really the last time we saw like serious, real. Bill Clinton had serious growth, but it wasn't real. We're talking about the dot-com bubbles. He didn't start. It was really an initiative that started under Jimmy Carter that led to the financial crisis, and both parties had presidents that did nothing. Bill Clinton rode that throughout the 90s, along with the dot-coms, and basically, growth looked very strong, and the economy looked solid. It felt solid. If you were alive in the 90s, it felt good. The 80s felt great. The difference is that we started to see the change from the goods-producing sector of the U.S. economy in the 80s to the globalism era, which is sell out your manufacturing base, sell out the working family, sell out the working man, sell out the working woman, screw over a generation. If they have anything to complain about, get your buddies at Purdue Pharma and Merck and Pfizer and everywhere else to stuff opiates down their throat, benzos, whatever, you name it. Keep them in a stupor, hollow out their entire state, and move on. And build a ruling class, an economy that works for the ruling class. RFK put it the best. He really did. That for the ruling class and those who benefit from this system, it is this cushy form of socialism, this weird but very soft, very cushy form of socialism allows them to feel good, more like they're virtuous, right? Because they're taking care of all of these other people, when all those other people really want the dignity of work and they want their own ability to prosper. They don't want to survive, they want to thrive. And for all of those people, it's not a soft version of socialism. It's a brutal, oppressive, fascist state where the government and the private sector work to you over. And that's what it is. Throughout that period, let's call it the World Trade Organization dominant period, NAFTA, post-NAFTA, because George Herbert Walker Bush is to blame for NAFTA. Bill Clinton always got that. And listen, whatever, I get it, my Republican friends. You want to blame a Democrat every time you get a chance to, but Herbert Walker Bush gave you NAFTA, so don't get that shit wrong. Anyway, in the post-NAFTA era, all this, the WTO era, we accepted this transformation from a goods-producing sector to a service sector economy, one driven by predominantly consumer spending without your manufacturing base or a working-class base pumped up enough to support that level of consumer spending. And basically, we said you could have all those jobs if you give us cheap crap. If you change that fundamentally, of course, you're going to change what is going into the GDP formula that comes back with that number. Alone, I cannot stress, and you're going to see this in a second. I cannot stress the impact of Trump narrowing the trade deficit, potentially over the long term, adding tons of manufacturing jobs, construction jobs, goods producing jobs, mining. If he does that, which it appears he's already starting to do, it will dramatically change the numbers that we see out of the Bureau of Economic Analysis. We are somewhat hindered in a service sector economy for growing any more than like 2.5%. That's why Obama called it the new normal. Maybe I'm too old and you guys don't remember that. Obama called it the new normal because there are only so many people who are ever going to qualify for those jobs. Wage growth is never going to be what I remember it was when I was younger. It's just not going to happen. Working people don't make living wages in service sector economies. They chase around the professional and credentialed class, kissing their ass, trying to get their kids to become like them so they can have a job. They live very, very low on the ladder, and then, maybe even take something from the government dole or something. That's the reality. All right, so let's look at this after we had some data. We did say that this forecast last week was going to change. Here's the GDP now, and again, I mean, it's always taken with a grain because the Atlanta Fed is not. They're not. They're not Nostradamus with their magic 8-ball, but this is a big jump, even from just last week. The growth rate of real domestic product is a key indicator of economic activity, but the official estimate is released with a delay. Our GDP Now forecasting model provides a nowcast of the official estimate prior to its release by estimating GDP growth using a methodology similar to the one used by the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. What they're trying to explain to you is, and I'll tell you, and I explained this on Friday a little bit, there are 3 GDP readings that we focus on. There is the advanced estimate. What is the initial estimate? It is very inconclusive. We didn't have much at all, and certainly not relevant indicators or the data, the data necessary to get a more comprehensive reading of gross domestic product. And I told you that this is what Trump is doing. This is particularly impactful, these missing indicators. And when we get them, you better expect this to dramatically improve and improve quickly, because it's simple a matter of what they just mentioned, the methodology of how gross domestic product is calculated. A big 2 things happened. 1, we got that new information, and 2, consumer spending was much stronger than we expected. Then you get the second estimate, which plugs in some more of that. Then you get the third, or what is referred to as the final estimate. Right. And they do go back, by the way, and make little revisions. That does happen. It has happened. But those are the 3 readings that we focus on when we're talking about gross domestic product. All right. All right. GDP Now is not an official forecast of the Atlanta Fed. Rather, it is best viewed as a running estimate of real gross domestic product based on available economic data for the current measured quarter. There are no subjective adjustments made to GDP Now. The estimate is based solely on the mathematical results of the model. Recent forecasts for the GDP model are available here. You can read and see them more if you guys want. More extensive numerical details, including underlying source data, forecasts, and model parameters, are available on a separate spreadsheet. It is the one reason, even when they're not accurate, that I do like them. They're just so open with their methodology. You can also view an archive of recent commentaries from GDP Now estimates. Please note that we no longer support the app, etc., blah, blah, blah. The latest estimate for today, ladies and gentlemen, is 4.6%. Whoa! Cooking! Look at that chart. Cooking! That's disgustingly good. The GDP Now model estimate for real GDP growth, seasonally adjusted annual rate in the second quarter of 2025 is 4.6% on June 2nd, which is up from 3.8, which we discussed on Friday. As this morning's release from the U.S. Census Bureau, the Institute for Supply Management, the nowcast of second quarter real personal consumption expenditure growth and real gross private domestic investment growth went up from 3.3% and -1.4 respectively to, are you ready? 4 flat and positive 0.5. Woo! Woo! This is really good news if you're a Trump supporter. This is really good news if you're the White House. Why? Because there are a lot of people out there who really don't understand this. All they hear is what they hear. They're busy. They're trying to make a living. You know the drill, guys. They're trying to make a living. They're trying to do their thing. They are not sitting there and analyzing every economic indicator that comes in. But they do feel things. Perception matters. And if this is what's going on, and again, they're spending. If they're spending, it's because there's a level of confidence there. We told you there was something wrong with the consumer sentiment survey and even the confidence index to a certain degree, because we don't have 85 as a relative value. So, or a baseline value. We don't use 1985 as a baseline value. So, we do have, I want to say it allows us to be a little bit more sensitive. More, no, I would say it a little bit more in context. Plus, we show you a little bit more detail about those sub indicators. And one can go whack and make one of the sub indexes look like they're doing something crazy, and it makes it look worse than it is. But when you drill down into it, you see that people are actually telling you that while I'm concerned now about maybe the general condition of the economy, considering what we're hearing, at the end of the day, I'm feeling pretty good about it. And 6 months from now, I think this thing is going to be bussin'. Did I use that correctly, honey? Hope so. All right, so yeah, I mean, that's it. That's good news. Really good news. Now we have to get on to, and I got to consider how much of a prick I want to be here. Let's get the last and final. What do we got as the latest here? That's not the latest. That's from 16 hours ago. Don't want to give them anything. Certainly don't. All right, so that's 95.31. There's more in than that. I know there is. It turned out to be, I mean, look, it still looks like a close vote, but there's something I think that we need to focus on here. And that is this swing that some people call the mirage in young voters in the United States of America. This swing is a global phenomenon. This is not something that is isolated to one country and not the other. There are some that are lagging. There are some that are lagging other countries, but we have been watching this in many other areas. But there's clearly evidence that this is a global thing. And you got to wonder, because now we're beyond the point now of considering that this is real. Democrats have lost control of younger voters, and nobody really knows exactly what it is. And we're all starting to get past the idea that they did. It's just a reality. Was it TikTok? Was it social media? Was it the lack of was it the lack of Democrats being able, let me see if I can put this correctly, the media and entertainment industries simply did not anymore be they're not influential. Their heroes aren't there, right? They're not listening to these people in the way that they did before. We have younger voters that we always split up, and there's very clearly a difference between these voters who have the tail end of that go to college, it's the best thing for you, right? They're still on the tail end of that, but many of them are coming out of that now. And you got to wonder if social media played a role. Are they watching their families, their parents struggle in this kind of a system? Do they themselves think that the social swing to the left or right in social issues just went way too far? Maybe they're tired of being clawed at by furries in the hallway in school. I mean, that's you got it's there's a lot of that. There's a lot of thinking that's going into it. A lot of people are including us are looking at it, and I'll tell you where I stand. I think it's a little bit of everything. I think that you're getting a younger generation that's identifying more conservative than, especially men, identifying more conservative than generations before them in the last half century, because I think they've seen it all. They saw the lies with to get us into wars. They saw COVID, guys. They saw that BS with COVID. They're super skeptical, and the left loves to make fun of them because they say, you know what? They're basically neurotic. They suffer from high levels of anxiety, and essentially that this is not the group of voters we want anyway in our coalition. That's how I've personally heard a lot of Democrats attempting to talk themselves off the cliff with what they're seeing by basically saying these people have mental illnesses, as if the people who think that they're another gender don't have mental illnesses. It's just insane, right? But they're justifying it because they don't have another good answer for themselves, right? What is a story they're going to tell themselves? They're usually the party of young people. They can't hold on to this party. So what are they going to tell themselves? Or they can't hold on to this group of people. They have to tell themselves a story, as we all always do, don't we? We always tell ourselves a story. I don't know why this map is at 95%, and I'm really trying to see what the most recent ones are. Doesn't look like they are going to update. Well, that's unfortunate. Okay. Well, look, bottom line is a lot of pollsters had this race, the left wing to lose, and that didn't happen. The last poll that people were paying attention to or were looking at were clearly the Atlas Intel poll. All right. We all know how I feel about that. Here is the tracking of the Atlas Intel poll. You can see Naraki, and I am not going to try to pronounce that. But very clearly, he even outperformed Duda in many areas, and it was not the election that the left was hoping for. Very clearly not. A part of this, too, we saw in Poland is this group of young voters that is swinging away from the left in dramatic fashion. Let me just actually get you some. Okay, let me give you some stats here. Man, I don't even know how to. Duda won. I'm gonna do this the easiest way I can, guys, because some of the names. My best friend when I was growing up was Polish, and he had a long, very difficult Polish name, and I got that down. But it never did. It was never a tongue that easily rolled off my tongue. All right. Duda only won about 36% of the vote that of 18 to 29-year-olds in polling. Same demographic that we track, right? In our exit polls, we break them up 18 to 29. And then in the detail age group, we break it up 18 to 24 and 25 to 29. So let's just do the 18 to 29 here. Duda won like 36% of them in 2020. That's it. Right now, Naraki is looking like he's winning 52%. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's a 31-point swing to the right. This is happening everywhere. It's not just in America. However, they very, they're very much appears to be, there very much appears to be a all over the West phenomena. It's funny. David Shore sat down with the New York Times a couple weeks ago. I wanted to break the interview up with it and sit down and share it with you in a longer term format. I really did. But oh my God, I'm gonna do this live, aren't I? I'm sorry if I seem distracted. It's because I am. There's someone sent me some shit about this poll in Poland, and it's just absolutely. Oh my God. Somebody went through the servers and got it. Oh my God. Oh, do I do this live? I don't know. I got to check this out. I can't do it live, guys. I can't do this live. It's about this poll that I'm showing on my screen right now. And somebody just sent me something that's extremely relevant. If you wait that much, there's no justification for that. There just isn't. You can't do that. You can't do that. It is true that Atlas showed a closer race. However, you may find more favor with me, and you may find that I would let you off the hook a little bit easier because there are things called sampling errors and there are things called confidence intervals, which I've argued we don't do as pollsters a good enough job explaining to people because they are expecting absolute bullseye results from pollsters all the time, even though we have been able to deliver that for you. We were what, 0.2% off the national popular vote in the presidential election, maybe 0.1. I don't even know anymore, but we were by far the closest. If it wasn't for the two things, I may be a little bit easier on them, but they were just 24 hours before the election in Poland criticizing Rasmussen for reports, calling them inaccurate because they were off by 1 point in the state of Michigan. 1 point. Rasmussen's sampling error was over 3 points. That's a good poll. It may not have accurately predicted the winner, but a Harris +1 is not a confident win. Is not a high degree of confidence that Harris was going to win that state. It said that it was very close. And I will say this, though. We did, unlike many others, including them, we in fact identified that Michigan was going to be a stronger state than Wisconsin for Trump this time. Sometimes Trump was leading in that state by 3-4 points. It was going to be Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, which was new. And there was several reasons we pointed out for that. The the electorate, the percentage of the electorate that is non-college, non-white, it's larger in the state of Michigan. So if this trend, which did turn out to be true, was in fact true, we would expect Michigan to be more Trumpy than Wisconsin because Wisconsin is whiter. And by the way, more educated. And then the second thing is how Trump had performed in Michigan in prior elections among non-whites. He outperformed his national support levels among Hispanics and blacks in Rust Belt states, particularly in Michigan, where basically he barely lost Hispanics in Michigan in 2020. Barely. In an election, he lost. He won them in Michigan this time. That's right. Donald Trump won Hispanic voters in Michigan. I seem to remember putting out a poll where Trump was ahead in Michigan by Hispanics, right? Among Hispanics, and hearing a whole lot of crap and me trying to explain to people that he barely lost Hispanics in 2020. This is absolutely a viable option. This absolutely. If the country's national sample of Hispanics is swinging by a 15 point margin, then we would expect him to win the state by about 5 to 7 points. Actually, since the state on a presidential level under Donald Trump, the state was actually around R+4 he would win by about 7 to 10 points. In fact, he won Hispanics by, I believe, about 7 points. This is absolutely viable. And then the second thing is, of course, this idea like you could just make up things after the fact. Like, oh, we were the first ones to show a tighter race. Bro, stop. I can hedge too. We all can hedge too. And the third thing is that Laura sent specific messages showing up the results of our final national poll, specifically twice. Once when they got it wrong, and second to correct them. And they didn't correct them on their own scorecard because that would have meant they were not the most accurate pollster that cycle. We were. And that didn't go well with his little marketing strategy. So he pretended like he was misunderstanding Laura and I. Like, that's great for your little scorecard, but when Real Clear Politics goes over the record, they know the number. Right? When Decision Desk goes over the record, they know the number. And by the way, Kamala Harris was never ahead in the state of North Carolina, and there is no such thing as rotails. I mean, there's a whole lot of bullshit I could actually just start spouting off about right now. There is, even though they defended that as the reason for Harris leading in North Carolina, which he never did. There is no academic research. There is no industry research to suggest that reverse coattails is a real thing at the presidential level. No chance. No way. Go find it. Go find it. Knock yourself out. Mark Halpern even did a show about this, if you remember, where he talked to all these Democratic consultants, and they were like, yeah, that's not a real thing. We just say it. I mean, I don't know. You guys could go watch that. That's not a real thing. It's not. So when someone makes an argument like that, like my bullshit meter goes off, you know, starts to get to levels, red levels, bullshit meter at red levels. We need oh man, absolutely. Laura, we need an animated bullshit meter that comes on the screen when I detect bullshit. Pardon my French. For all I know, my pastor could be watching. This is becoming like a thing. Okay. I don't want to get in trouble on Sundays. So I'll have to. Turns out Laura was right about that. This don't sound good to me at all. What was just messaged to me, that looks very bad. I'm not going to be irresponsible. I will go and look at it, but it does not look good for that poll. And it goes with what I have told others, and I'm not even making a secret of it. I told others this in the industry and media. There were many things that just look weird to me, guys. They look weird to me. Like Wisconsin, we were just talking about. I know how you can get that kind of a margin with black vote for Donald Trump. I know how you can do that. You weight the wrong variable, attempting to adjust the result, the top line result, to something you want. And when you do, you're not looking at your subgroup of black voters. And for instance, all of a sudden they go from 20 or 30% conservative to like 50 or 45. And it may be disproportionately to male, which is going to impact them. And next thing you know, poof, you have this small subsample that's crazy and out of whack, and it shows a ridiculous level of support from Donald Trump. This is why we don't do that stuff. It's not even a question. There are variables that are legitimate to wait for, and then there are others that are not. This is interesting. We got to play this clip because we were talking about the economy. As much of the trouble that, because I don't want to continue and go on forever about this, there's a lot of other news that's relevant news, but I'm just saying, I freaking told you so. Okay? I told you so. I saw this coming a mile away. I saw this coming before the election. I don't understand how conservative media and influencers fall for the same scam over and over and over again. And by the way, if you're citing the Silver Bulletin's pollster scorecard, you're a fucking hack. Don't tell me you're an industry reformer fighting against the machine and trying to bring back integrity to the polling industry while you're citing the biggest fraud who has done the most damage to our industry out of any single person. Don't tell me that and then cite that guy. And there's also no way to turn out another poll in North Carolina in fucking 6 hours. It's not possible. So disappointing. Anyway, here's our clip from our friend Harry. This is part of par for the course, because you have to understand there is more younger working class now than there was 5 years ago, even 10 years ago. And I'm wondering if this continues, because if it does, Democrats will have a real problem if Republicans ever get their heads out of their asses, which is part of the reason why I tweeted what I tweeted yesterday. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from with this. They're going to do what they're going to do, and that's up to Republicans. You cannot get these new voters, especially when Trump is gone, by replacing old white guys with other old white guys. I'm not saying go out and recruit based on race. I'm not. Go find a white guy. Just find a young, dynamic MAGA white guy. They'll be more effective than a fake, non-white MAGA pretender. But what you cannot do, I repeat, what you cannot do is go out and replace them with bald, old men who look like the country club Republican of George W. Bush. And sound like, by the way, because they're all frauds. All you have to do is flash $1 million in front of the NRSC or the NRCC, and boom, you're the serious candidate. Such a scam. This is how Republicans keep getting these just rhinos, these frauds in deep red states like Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, who they'll replace with another hack if they continue down this route. Or California, Corin running all over the place, looking for fake MAGA Indians, Hispanics, and black candidates. Like, just be authentic. Voters smell bull a mile away. They smell inauthenticity a mile away. And Republicans, you don't have a coalition. Donald Trump has a coalition. And he does because he's authentic. You may think he's this, he's that, he's this. It doesn't matter to the voter. They believe him. He's a phenom. You're not going to recreate the Donald Trump phenom. Well, I am also a successful businessman. Mm-hmm. Put your sweater vest on and get your ass back on the golf course. Nobody is going to vote for you. How many times do we have to address this? And then you have these idiot Republicans in California seriously like, well, how do you propose if we don't have a Hispanic candidate? We win Hispanic votes. First of all, you pluck that dude from the donor ranks. He don't even look Hispanic. He's whiter than me. He's got nothing in common with the bad hombres. Nothing. And I'll tell you how I propose to do it the same way that the 78-year-old white guy from Queens, New York did. It's called be yourself. Find a genuine candidate who isn't acting when they're talking about these issues, because voters can tell. But this is what they do. They get these guys, they push them, and some girls, push them through the primary process with their old white base, which is not the vote that they need on an actual election day in the general election to win these districts and these states and these races. It's the same thing over and over again. It's like madness. Donald Trump's going to be gone sooner than you all think. 3 years goes by like that. We'll be into the campaign in a few months for midterms. Then that will roll into J.D. Vance coveting the Republican nomination because he's going to get it. And everyone else, by the way, you should just get the hell out of my boy JD's way. You are a waste of oxygen. You are an oxygen thief. I know who's thinking about running. You have no chance to beat JD Vance. He has a lot of work to do to build his brand and build his own image to the general electorate. Just go home. Go to bed. Put your feet up. Get a hungry man and chillax. You have no chance. All you're going to do is drag on some BS friggin' contests, spend all sorts of money that shouldn't be spent. Why don't you do yourselves a favor and go knock on doors? Why don't you go to the neighborhoods that you just don't even feel comfortable walking and you're afraid to knock on Trump voter doors? You know it and I know it. Go to Chowchilla in CA13. And by the way, that stupid ass thing. We should have David on. I don't know. Get David on, Laura. I don't know when. He just knows so much about this. How are you gonna win Hispanic votes? Knocking on doors in Chowchilla, where he won them before. He lost the white vote. It's just a stupid ass friggin' thing. And how did you lose again? His precincts voted for Adam Gray. And it's just one of many, many examples. We could go over this in Michigan as well. Let's run a deep state old white guy. Let's chase out the MAGA authentic, not perfect, Detroit mayor. Let's chase him out of the race and threaten to drag out skeletons and demons as if Mike Rogers doesn't have demons. It's just that some people's demons stay in the closet, you know, and some don't. That's the biggest problem with this game. They all have demons. We all have demons. It's just that some are allowed to stay in the closet along with their deep state buddies. But he did win the Hispanic vote. Yeah, he won it by like 2 points. Trump won it by like 10. And on top of that, he was missing all those new black voters that Trump brought in urban Detroit, coupled with, let's call it unsatisfactory margins in Macomb, in Monroe, Saginaw, the Reagan Democrat areas. When are these people going to learn? When are these people going to learn? All right. It's 2:48, right? I got to play this clip. All right. Let's roll. Oh, my God. No, I'll play this clip after. How could I have forgotten? I absolutely forgot. It's just so fun. It pisses me off, guys. Honest to God, in case you haven't noticed, it's like human stupidity because it's not ignorance anymore. There's a difference. Commercials and people are going to yell at me. There's a difference between ignorant and stupid. When you're ignorant, it means you just may not know something. Maybe you just weren't aware of something. So your views on a certain thing, or whether you even know something about something, are not full or complete. You're ignorant toward it. Stupid is when you've been told that information over and over again. It's demonstrably true. The empirical record has repeated it over and over and over again, and you're sitting there like freaking Helen Keller, drooling on yourself. Helen Keller, that's an insult to Helen Keller. Comparing the Republican consultant class and the Republican Party stalwarts, comparing them to Helen Keller is an insult to Helen Keller. Sorry, Helen. I apologize. Let's take a break. Short message from our friends over at 1776. Look, You know that feeling when your coffee actually does what it's supposed to do? You know what I'm talking about. You get up, you're like, oh my God, my eye boogers. You're like crashing into stuff. You're on your way to the pot. You're like, it clears your head, it lifts your energy. It doesn't leave you crashing an hour later, hopefully. That's what good coffee is supposed to feel like. And that's what you get with 1775 coffee. Their coffee is organic, it's single origin, high altitude, and small batch roasted. That means no toxin because the altitude, by the way, means less uh, chemicals. You don't need to spray for the insects that cannot live up there. That means no toxins, no acidity, no jitters, just smooth, clean coffee that fuels your day without wearing you down. And right now, with their free starter kit, you get 3 free bags of premium coffee plus exclusive coffee merch, which includes a black tumbler, which is matte. It's really cool looking, frother, the gold scoop, and a reusable K-cup filter. You pay for 2 bags of coffee, and 1775 covers the rest. Whether you drink whole bean, ground coffee, or K-cup pods, you can choose your option. This means you're paying less than $1 for a cup of coffee that's just quality that you just won't find in most other stores. Head to 1775coffee.com/TPP and start your morning with coffee that supports your values and your health. Look, folks, they support me, so we support them. And also, it is rare when you get something. If you got it, I want to hear your thoughts. Drop it in the chat if you guys got the starter kit or whether you just bought something from 1775. Let me know which one you tried and which one, which ones you preferred or what you thought about them. Amazing. Like, I have family coming and stealing 1775 coffee from my home. I kid you not. Like, you have any more of that? Like, I do, but like not enough to give away. You can go to 1775coffee.com/TVP. And then I turn my back and there's like the bag is light 5 ounces. I kid you not. This is happening. The K, whoa. We had 20 count last time. It was a 20 count on the K cup. What's going on here? Counting 15 heads, 15 heads. Someone dipped in. Somebody dipped in. It's my mother-in-law. It is. You know it, Mom. You know it. Stay out of my coffee. 1775coffee.com/TPP. They're amazing. I really love them. I really am. Again, Garrett, like, is this an insult to Helen Keller? Is it? Are we insulting Helen Keller? Like, I feel like Helen Keller, given enough times, would be able to get the piñata, brother. You know what I mean? Like, Republicans are so stupid, they'll never hit that piñata. They'll wind up walking 2 miles in the other direction and fall off a freaking cliff before they come anywhere near to that piñata. Telling you. All right, let's get 1775 off. Okay, let's play this. We are quickly coming up at 3 o'clock already. Wow. Will this last? Something for Republicans to celebrate now. And certainly this age shift has something to do with this because there are less educated young people now than there were 10 years ago, or at least in the pipeline. Okay. This is the problem. The left is having a difficult time because they're not mass producing indoctrinated little privileged, spoiled little brats who join Antifa because they are looking for fulfillment in their life. A bunch of rich white kids running around telling us all how bad we are. Thank you. But can they keep this? That's the question. I have zero faith. I have been around too long. I think they need to be forced. I think President Trump's endorsees have to go down. Sorry. Many of them. He's going to endorse some really bad people. He has endorsed some really bad people that really, he's doing it thinking of himself right now. Just true. I got to get this through committee. I got to get this through Congress. Yeah, the church needs to be reconstructed, Emperor. Some of Trump's endorsees have to go down. You will not get another chance to take them out when he's gone. It's the reality of it. Otherwise, all this could be in jeopardy.
Think after all of the waves, Kate Baldwin, after the last few months, the first 5 months of the Donald Trump presidency, right, the first 4 months of the Donald Trump presidency, that you expect that Democrats would have this massive lead on the economy. It ain't so. It ain't so. The party that is closest to your economic views, in November of 2023, it was the Republicans by 11 points. Now it's still within that range, still within that margin of error. Plus 8-point advantage for the Republican Party. How is that possible, Democrats? How is that possible after all the recession fears, after the stock market's been doing all of this, after all the tariffs that Americans are against, and Republicans still hold an 8-point lead on the economy? Are you kidding me?
This is CNN, this is new CNN polling.
Yes.
How is that, when we look for trends, how is that trending with other data that you're pulling in?
Yeah, if it was just this one CNN poll, that would be one thing. But take a look at Reuters Ipsos. What do we see here? Party with a better economic plan. Well, in May of 2024, just before Donald Trump was reelected president, Republicans had a 9-point advantage. Look at where we are now in May of 2025. The advantage actually went up by 3 points. Now Republicans have a 12-point advantage when it comes to the party with a better economic plan. And again, this is after months of supposed economic uncertainty in which the stock market's been going bonkers, in which the tariff wars that Americans are against have been going on. And yet, despite all of that, the Democrats are down by 12 points on the economy. This speaks to Democratic problems on the economy better than basically anything that you could possibly look at. The Republicans still hold an advantage on the all-important key issue of the day, and that is the reason why, even if Donald Trump's approval ratings are a little bit lower than they used to be, Republicans are not out of the ballgame because they still have a clear advantage on the economy, whether you look at CNN's polls or whether you look at the Ipsos poll right here, in which they have a 12-point advantage on the economy, Kate.
And also in the CNN data, it does show that Republicans are gaining ground in an area that is key relating to all of this, which is when it comes to the middle class.
Yeah. You know, historically speaking, which is the party of the middle class has been a huge advantage for Democrats. I have polling from NBC going all the way back since 1989 when Democrats had a 23-point advantage.
That's what he's got. I mean, Edison. So he's talking about exit polls there. There's also, I'm sure, he's just citing here NBC, CNBC, but those could be the Edison Research polls, Edison Research exit polls, because a lot of media polls didn't do robust polling back then. They just didn't. There were a few of them. We had Gallup, the gold standard, and then they did some here and there, which were pretty crappy even back then, honestly. If I remember correctly, USA Today had Jimmy Carter winning the popular vote by 2 points in their final poll. It was a headline that read something like, "It's a toss-up" or a coin toss or something, when, of course, it wasn't. Reagan absolutely thumped Jimmy Carter, and it wasn't even close, not even in the popular vote. Forget about the Electoral College, which was a disgusting landslide. I mean, so I suspect he's using NBC, CNBC, blah, 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 but really it's going back to when they were in the election consortium, which is the Edison Research exit polls. He did just say Edison.
2016, a 17-point advantage. But by this decade, we already started seeing declines back in 2022, where you saw that Democrats led, but only by 4 points, well within the margin of error. And now in our latest CNN poll among registered voters, which is the party of the middle class, it is tied. This, I think, speaks to Democratic ills more than anything else. They have traditionally been the party of the middle class. No more. Donald Trump and the Republican Party have taken that mantle away, and now a key advantage for Democrats historically has gone adios amigos, and now there is no party that is the party of the middle class. Republicans have completely closed the gap, Kate.
All right. There's a lot of messages and a lot to be learned from these numbers.
And there it is. I mean, I know at some point it's like blah, 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 right? But, I mean, didn't you know that already? Right. So despite all of the, again, this is why I always tell people that the polls on tariffs and all this other stuff are like, they're just like, loading the question, not really trying to dig in and find out what the meaning of the question is. Like, obviously, voters in the Rust Belt support tariffs. Obviously. If you're like, oh my God, prices are going to fly up because of Trump's tariffs, do you support the tariffs or do you oppose the tariffs? Strongly? Likert scale? Likert scale? What the fuck is that? Do you support or oppose Donald Trump using tariffs as a trade negotiation strategy to get the U.S. more favorable trade deals and revamp the manufacturing base? That's like really what you're talking about. You don't even have to end all. You just ask them whether or not they support or oppose the use of tariffs as a negotiation tactic strategy to get more favorable trade deals. That's why Trump won 12 to 18, depending on the state, of Bernie Sanders supporters back in 2016. That's why by the time 2020 came along, Bernie Sanders wasn't winning a mixture of rural and suburban working class voters anymore. That wasn't his coalition, compared to Hillary Clinton, who was winning the urban progressive. He was winning the urban progressive vote. Why? Because they all left and went to Donald Trump anyway. Of course. The reason it's taking this long is because of the Republican Party's identity crisis, because of their constant stabbing of Trump in the back, because of their constant contradictory messaging with Donald Trump on things like trade. Donald Trump tries to do exactly what he says he's going to do, and you have butt plugs like Tom Tillis and Lindsey Graham and the rest of them questioning whether or not he's got the authority to do that. Maybe we should pass a bill in the Senate. What do you think, Rand? Leave it to the disgusting cowardice of the Republican Party to bridge the gap between the libertarian Rand Paul and Thomas Massie with the full-blown military-industrial complex D-suckers like Lindsey Graham and Tom Tillis. It could only be the lack of Republican backbone responsible for creating that unity. Tell you. All right, it's 3:02. All right, listen, if you like the show, don't forget to like the show and share it far and wide. I'm going to go redo this. I think I may have just saved it on somewhere else and I can't find it at the moment. But let me give you a little bit of a spoiler alert. In 2020, actually, let's go back further. In 2016, we went over Pennsylvania. Democrats had an advantage of 8 points in the state of Pennsylvania. There was just a whole lot of Democrats who voted and called themselves Republicans, or at that time with Trump they did, right? But the registrations just kept going and kept changing, kept shifting. Over time, we could see that nationally. Democrats would have a 4-point advantage, roughly 5-point advantage. Just in January of 20 and January of 23, both the voter analysis models, the base model showing only inactive voters, had Democrats leading about 37 to 33%. I'm talking about inference and registrations. That has completely evaporated. It is gone. And when you actually do, which we could do on the show, on the next show, once I put it out, when we go over it, when you do some modest adjustments to the parameters of the query to make sure you're looking at a realistic electorate, right, to put it in layman's terms, what you're finding is that there's still a lot of junk on the voter file, and that isn't even really the case. That the country is really around R+1, R+2. That's how it's voting. That's how it just voted. These polls that keep coming out with D plus anything samples are either doing it on purpose, which I think most of them are at this point, or they're just still so bad at their job. Let me tell you clear, because I'm even talking to the guys at Rasmussen about this, because they do their weights based on the consumer survey. The voter file is the voter file. This is machine learning tech on known information, not guessing, not influenced by some sort of response bias or, whatever it may be, fielding dates, whatever it may be. This is real information, not guessed or assumed or an artifact of how the survey was conducted. Anyone who has D plus anything is just wrong. I'm not talking about likely voters, because that is the concern for Rasmussen, is that will Democrats in the midterm vote at higher rates because they have the more higher propensity vote now? Maybe, but that's not what we're seeing. we're seeing registered voter samples with outrageous advantages for Democrats. Don't give me this. This is how polls work sometimes and blah, 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 blah. I do not wait for party ID. If you wait for party ID, you did something wrong. You should get a representative sample based on the other demographic variables that are core demographic variables if your methodology is sound and if you're reaching a representative sample of out there in the target population. You're not if you're coming back with those. And if you are and you're changing them, which it looks like somebody did, by the way, that is no bueno. That's data manipulation. There would be rightful outrage if somebody popped out a poll right now, national poll, and it was like R+8. I think you would see everyone from the media university who are clearly left-wing to the more independent people and the ones who are smeared all the time for being right. We would all say, bro, that's crazy. But check this. An R+4 or 5 or 6 national sample in a poll is still more representative than a D+9. 100%. The country's going and has been going in one direction for years now. We're talking about a 10-year trend here, folks. Solid 10-year trend. Isolated instances, maybe in Arizona and Georgia because of migration patterns, but ones that were a short blip on the screen, and Democrats blew it. And states like Arizona went hard back to the right, at least at the presidential level, and definitely in the registrations. So you would actually be more justified in coming out with a heavy R+ sample than you would nationally in a D+ sample, even though I still wouldn't do it. But like an R+4, absolutely possible. It's more like R++2. But I'm saying, if there's going to be some kind of overestimation one way or the other, to overestimate the Democratic advantage in identification at this point in time is not justified at all. Not by the reality and not by the trends that we're seeing. And a likely voter model is not going to move it 4 damn points. Not going to happen. So don't give me that excuse either. You put your thumb on the scale. You change the weight variable for party because you wanted an outcome. That's it. End of story. I don't know what we're debating over. Stop debating. You sound like an idiot. You sound like a moron. You're defending the indefensible. Just be quiet. Do better. Making a fool of yourself. And you're pissing me off because you're trying to mislead people. Alrighty-o. Don't forget, 1775 coffee. The link is in the description below, as is the public polling project. We got some decent contributions for it. It's great that we don't have to wait until the last minute. Praise God. All right. If people are going to contribute like that, we'll be good. Maybe we can even start to move up the timetable on some of the surveys, but we shall see. All right. And I actually, Eric, I just want to put your super chat up on here. Thanks for the chat. But I actually think Donald Trump should do this. I don't know what he's doing here. Fireside chat kind of conversation in the more modern era sense. This should absolutely be happening. 100% agree. All right. Don't forget, I'll be on Quite Frankly later tonight. Whoop, whoop. Going to be a good time. Be missing political conversation. We're going to have some very different kind of conversation today, which is going to be very cool. I'm sure he'll ask me something about, what's going maybe with Poland or whatnot, but we are having a very different conversation about work that we have done that, frankly, other people don't do. The one thing we did, it's not like a study you're going to constantly do over and over again. I could see going back to it after 5 years or so, but it's a very unique niche scope, so it's not something that has to be revisited like that because you're not going to get so many more experiences over the course of like a year. Maybe you do. That's something we could see, but But then there's a lot of other stuff. There has been a lot of developments about that topic and subject matter. So it hasn't made it into the news as much, but there certainly has. And it's about time. We're actually late on that question for this year. All right. But I hear it. I do have a client update I got to do in like 10 minutes and followed by something else after that. So I guess we do have to boogie here, but we have to flip flop the inside and between the numbers. I think Thursday we're going to do an inside the numbers. I'll keep you posted and I'll let you know for sure, but it is possible I will not get back on time for Friday. So which means I'll run something on Thursday that's inside the numbers, or take Laura's advice if it is possible and just do it later. It's just that we lose a lot of people when we do it later. So keep the same time, keep the same audience. If that's what's got to be done, then I'm not opposed to it as long as we get a show out. All right. But I just want to make sure we don't miss any one block. All right. That's it, right? Yep. All right, locals. I will see you guys soon. I'll crank this thing out and get this out to you. The voter analysis model. I'll crank this out and get this out to you. I don't know what, maybe it is here and I just shared it. I just saved it into a file and now I got to go look for it. But it was done deal. I actually think I may have saved it and sent it to somebody else. So that would be great if I did, because that'd be great if I did. Oh, that's Pennsylvania. Phenomenal. But it wasn't just, I'll give you a bit of a peek. It wasn't just that Democrats collapsed and came down. Republicans gained and Democrats fell. And then they met in the middle. And that's where the country is right now. But because the trend is clearly moving in one direction, which is toward the right, if you're going to see any kind of an advantage on any sample for either party, it sure as hell wouldn't be the Democratic Party. Where are they adding these registrations? Somebody please tell me. California and New Jersey, for crying out loud, moves hard to the right. New York moved hard to the right. What state is doing it? Florida used to be a dead even state. It's now double-digit Republican. Which state? Texas? What happened? I thought Democrats were making huge gains in Texas. They got their asses kicked. Which state is fueling this D+9 trend? Where? What collection of states? It doesn't exist. They lost every bit of they had 5-point advantage the last presidential election in the state of Nevada. Gone. It's now a dead even state. Arizona, they narrowed to almost even, but now forget it. It's like R+9. Maricopa's R+4. Where? Justify it. Quit with the cute little tweets. What state? With that, I'll be off. Don't forget to like the videos again if you like them. And as always, the best place to follow us is on Locals. peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, later, folks.